We'll probably try and keep it around 25 to 30 minutes or so today. But thank you guys for coming out. My name is Grady Smith. I'm a financial advisor with Jones Keystone, and that's covering anything from, retirement plans you were, curious about offering your employees, as well as individual financial planning and wealth management. Jones brought me on to their team about 6 months ago, but I've been in the industry for about 3.5 years. Financial planning has always been in my blood. My father worked for Vanguard and Fidelity for the better part of 35 years before retiring 2 years ago. So it's something that finance is something I always knew I was passionate about. But it really was, I thought about, do I want to be a guy behind, a computer crunching numbers? Not really. That's not for me. I like to be out there. I like to meet people, to introduce myself to people and be able to look people in the eye and help them when it comes to navigating their financial landscapes. And I'm actually joined, co-hosting this presentation today will be Drew Carter. He is with Crossfire Financial. And Drew, I'll let you take a moment to kind of tell the folks about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Grady. So like you said, my name is Drew Carter. I'm with Crossfire Financial Coaching, and I'm a Ramsey preferred financial coach. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, that is where I am certified through, and those are the principles that I teach. So my main focus is similar in track with Grady's, but different in that I work more with the personal finance side of things. For example, budgeting, getting out of debt, and basically just helping people become financially literate. In today's world, not everybody's great with it. So I sit down with folks, take the time to come up with budgets and kind of help them get everything in order, whether they're married, single, all the different places in between, and just work with them on becoming, in essence, a sense of financial peace is what I work towards. So today I'll definitely be chiming in with Grady on the personal finance side of things, almost like from an employee's perspective, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, because today's focus is really going to be how can employers communicate to their employees in order to set themselves up for financial success, particularly given, kind of these uncertain times. And really, that all kind of starts, with communication. We've seen a lot of success stories, because we obviously at Jones, we have hundreds of business clients, and, we've wanted to, be a resource and advocate for them, kind of during these times. What are the best practices to communicate with your employees and let them know just kind of the landscape of your business so that they can feel more comfortable, or they can at least have, more clarity in terms of what their short-term, medium-term, and long-term financial future and how they might be impacted just with everything that is going on with COVID. So, I think that, really we want to focus and stress on, or really we want to have a focus on communication to your employees. I really think that, best practice we want to look at having, either weekly messages or bi-weekly State of the Union email, so to speak, or, potentially even monthly, kind of virtual town halls, kind of during this time. I think that, are there any other kind of methods of communication or strategies that you think that you would, that employers should utilize during this time, Drew?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's really important to kind of look at it on the employee's side. Right now is a really weird time for a lot of people. And I know from personal experience that policy changes are happening almost weekly. As things reopen, as the landscape of everything else changes, policies are starting to change, things are getting more and more back to normal. And so having that constant communication, like you talked about, either weekly or even bi-weekly, which is okay as well, is one of those things that helps put people at ease. They've got to be able to plan for their future and know, hey, we've got this change that's coming up, because some of them, while your employees may be in a really good spot and everything's been going well financially for your business, their spouse or their significant other may not be so lucky to work in a place like that. So while they're having trouble with their side, giving your employee the clarity and the constant communication to feel confident in what you have going on will go a long way in helping them to plan for their future and their financial future together as a family, and know what they've got to adjust in the coming months. Obviously, it changes all the time, so that's something that you constantly have to evaluate. But just kind of doing the best you can, and most people understand. Hey, we know things are going to be different moving forward, but just let us know what's going to be different. And I think that goes a long way when you're working with your employees.
That's because it's very possible that your organization has had to cut employees' compensation. And if you have, or once again, maybe as Drew touched on, maybe their spouse has. What are sort of ways that we can help as employers to educate our employees and to ensure that they're making the best decisions for themselves, moving forward. And that really comes down to, Drew's a huge advocate for making sure you have, a solid monthly budget in place, sort of, that bare bones monthly budget, as well as, the importance of building up that safety net and having that safety net in place in case, as employers, you have had to cut employees' compensation. So what do you typically, recommend, if you were an employer, Drew, what would you tell your employees, this would be your recommended amount to have in savings?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the biggest points to definitely make is preparing for the future. And what that looks like right now is a little different, as we just talked about. But really communicating that, hey, just be prepared for the unknown. And what that looks like for some people is different from others based on their financial ability. And what I mean by that is maybe their income or their expenses that they see on a monthly basis. Everybody is different. So some people may be further ahead towards saving for that rainy day than other people, but it's important to communicate to them and say, look, now's a really good time to evaluate where you are and really, plan just in case. And for me, my just in case fund for my clients is usually 3 to 6 months of expenses. And really, this whole COVID thing has brought a really cool perspective into things because a lot of stuff has been closed. So your expenses on a monthly basis are really basic right now. You're covering your utilities, your home, your car, your transportation costs, things like that. But there's really nothing extra on top of it. And when you do an emergency fund like that of 3 to 6 months, that's really what you're planning for, is just the basics. We're not going to go out and do shopping sprees. We're not going to go on vacation. So that 3 to 6 month number has really become quite clear over the past few months or so. And then just sticking to your budget. It's super important to have a number to stick to and just know that, hey, this is how much I'm going to spend. And if you stay on track, it really helps you reach your goals. So from my side of things, that's definitely what I would recommend for them.
Yeah, and it's important to, if you guys are at a point where, if you are an employer who is offering a retirement plan, it's important to make sure that your advisor is communicating with the employees to making sure they're comfortable. Lots of employees might have seen significant volatility within their 401k. We have had, the market has bounced back here over the last couple of months, but it's still certainly extremely volatile and probably will be for the months to come. So it's really important to make sure that your employees are comfortable and that they have a resource to turn to with questions. So, and then it's really is making sure you're empowered as an employer to at least point them in the right direction to, make sure that your employees do feel at ease, with their overall 401k balance or investment questions, or if they're curious, hey, should I even continue contributing to this 401k? And that all kind of circles back to, the communication and, kind of letting employees know that they are comfortable so that they can say, all right, so I still can't contribute to my 401k. I don't necessarily need to, be aggressively, tucking money away in case something happens. That's something that we strongly advocate for. David, I know that you actually had questions about hardships within a 401k. If you have had employees who have come to you and said, hey, I need access, funds through my 401k, CARES has actually made this available to employees where they actually can pull funds from their 401k actually without penalty during this time, up to an amount of $100,000. Typically that's something that we want to make sure that employees are educated in the sense that, of the downsides and drawbacks of pulling funds from that 401k. What are the tax consequences, right? Are they aware of this? Are they aware of just, the overall compound effects that withdrawing from your 401k will have on its overall, account balance? At what point, Drew, do you typically advocate for employees for clients of yours to begin to save aggressively into your 401k?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For me, the emergency fund comes first. We want to make sure we take care of the house, as a lot of people like to put it. And once all that's squared away and we're contributing to our retirement, I always recommend at least the 15% of your income going into a retirement account, whether it's all in one or split between a couple different ones. Obviously, that's between them and their financial advisor, as I kind of back out at that point. But the biggest thing that I also like to point out is a lot of people are worried about contributing to 401ks right now, and they shouldn't be. If everything else is holding steady, you don't want to stop contributing just because, oh man, the balance is down pretty far, or things of that nature. Those are things that are going to happen throughout the lifespan of your 401k. So it's almost like you just kind of ride the wave and just stay the course. That's what I've been telling all my clients that have come to me. The other thing that I've seen a lot is, does my 401k count as an emergency fund? So I just talked a little bit about emergency funds, and David talked about, hardship for 401k, and you talked about the CARES Act for those withdrawals. But that's something that I really like to avoid with people. If we don't have to do it, let's just leave it alone. It's going to do better if it's just left alone, and we can find other ways to either beef up an emergency fund or find ways to save, or if it's an expense that's come about, figure out a way to handle that without having to worry about touching retirement. That'll go a long way. And just being able to, from an employer side, being able to reassure your employees that, hey, 401ks do this. It's okay. Yes, here's the CARES Act. This is what you're able to do. But make sure you talk to somebody before you go through with it, because let's know the ramifications. Some other things out there, to go along with the CARES Act, circles all the way back to the communication we've been talking about the whole time. And on an employee side, just if you talk to them and just let them know, hey, stay in constant communication with who you need to. For me, with my clients that have hit some hard times and lost some income at work, I've preached to them from day one, hey, if you can't make a payment or you need some help, reach out. There's a lot of organizations, a lot of companies right now that are offering assistance to those that need it, whether it's a mortgage payment deferral or, working with car loans, things like that. Insurance companies are even doing kickbacks on insurance. So it's one of those things where communication from them to whoever it is they may feel in trouble with, that kind of stuff is great to let them know, hey, just reach out. And if you need help, I'm here. That goes a long way as well.
And ultimately, if you are an employer and you do administer a 401k and you and your employees have not heard from their advisor on the plan, it's time for you to get a new advisor for sure. It's because, you do want to just be a resource for your employees during the times where they probably do have questions. So just make sure that you are aligning yourself with the right team around you, with the appropriate advisors around you, and resources that are available to you. Oftentimes we have our clients come in and we actually have Drew come in and do a lunch and learn for your employees, and really do kind of to really set themselves up for overall financial success, and that really stems from protection, savings, and growth, and it really starting, with that overall, with having that emergency fund so that your employees can feel safe. And then from there, making sure that we do have the right protection, in place. That's life insurance, that's disability, that's, we want to make sure that everyone is buttoned up with, appropriate coverages there. But then it's putting that plan in place to then allow you to be in a position where you can aggressively grow and save your assets to have, a prosperous retirement, for sure. So, yeah, it really is, so when you typically do offer, a series, Drew, what are the steps that you want to walk participants through, in order to, reach a point where they can realistically achieve their financial goals?
Sure. Yeah, great question. It's one of those things where everybody's different. There's not very many people that are in the same exact position financially. Everybody's kind of got their own path that they're walking down. But for me, my principles are always the same. They're basic financial principles. Even though we call them the baby steps, they're pretty much recommended by everybody. That's just a fancy name that we give them to make them sound a little easier. But the first one is always saving. First off is $1,000. That's what we start out as, an emergency fund. Once we get through that really is focused on getting people that are just starting out to change their mindset to saving rather than spending, and to really figure out where their money's going. So we start budgeting on top of that. And once we get the budgeting down, that usually takes about 3 months or so, working with my clients to really figure out their numbers. But the first, bit of the series is all based on saving, budgeting, and then from moving on to that, we go into debt payoff and fully funding an emergency fund. So that's the 3 to 6 months that we talked about. Those two things are done one after the other, but they kind of work in conjunction because you're ultimately trying to achieve the same goal, and that's to start saving money rather than owing money. And after you get those two things taken care of, then we're on to investing. And that's in your retirement, in children's college funds, and then ultimately back in yourself by paying off a home early if you've got one. And then the ultimate goal is financial freedom, right? So we don't want to owe anybody any money. We want to be paying ourselves. And that's what we focus on. So we're walking through those steps as we go. And like I said, some people are in different areas. Some people have already saved up a large amount of money, but they also owe a large amount of debt. So they have to figure out their path that they're going to walk, whereas somebody may just be in a lot of debt and has never saved any money in their lives. So it's really about getting everybody on the same page to achieve that same goal. And walking the steps is okay from different areas because they're mainly the same ones. So that's what we walk with people through. It's just, hey, let's sit down, do a budgeting seminar. Let's learn how this works. And once we get that down, let's move on to the next one and start saving, start paying off debt, and those sorts of things as we walk.
Absolutely. And, kind of one last thing we want to make sure that we touch on today is the Paycheck Protection Program. If your organization has secured, a PPP loan, it's hard to believe, but we're already coming up on, 2 months since you may have secured one, and your employees are probably aware of those dates that are coming up. If they feel like, okay, I may have, that our organization may have only kept a certain group of people employed due to PPP, they're probably aware of those dates. They may not, may or may not be aware of when you actually secured that loan, but they're going to be aware of those dates coming up. And once again, that just all goes back to making sure that you have that open line of communication with employees. We want to make sure we retain our talent, because even if they are currently still working, we want to make sure we hold on to some of that top talent, which might be looking elsewhere because they might have concerns about their overall job stability, because it really is, everybody's looking for job security right now. And then other things you can do with PPP, if you have taken out a PPP loan and you do have some payroll deficiencies, reach out to your lender and let's, so that they can discuss with you ways that you can account for those deficiencies in payroll costs. And one of the ways that you can do so is retirement plan contributions. So we've dealt with several employers that the PPP loan that they received, they did have payroll deficiencies. So in order to make sure that the entire loan is forgiven, they've made profit sharing plans to their remaining employees, just to kind of help to ensure that that loan is forgiven. If that's something that you have questions in regards to, feel free to reach out to go to our website. It's jones-insurance.com, and go to the Ask Jones page and just say, hey, I have PPP questions. I have paycheck protection questions. And either myself or someone from our HR team will reach out to you and be able to help steer you and guide you the right direction, as we all try and navigate these new rules with each other. That's kind of has been the most frustrating thing about the Paycheck Protection Program, is that it feels like no one can give you an answer with certainty, because everybody's reading the same 30-page document and trying to distinguish what all the rules are, what is forgivable and what's not. But we want to make sure that you're armed with all the information available to you to maximize those SBA programs which are available to you. For sure. Of any other resources, Drew, that we wanted to touch on before we kind of adjourn today?
No, not as far as resources. I would just say, keep in mind that every employee right now is going through something different financially, mentally. The changes in how they're working may be something that they're going through as far as working from home, which is different. That brings a whole new level of stress. But the important thing to get out of all this is going to bring about a lot of change for people. It's opened up a lot of people's eyes that, hey, maybe I need to be better prepared for the future, or it's given some people even a real good sense of accomplishment in that they were prepared for this. So, you're going to have people on different ends of the spectrum, and being prepared for both of those employees to come back to work in different mindsets is important, and will help them as they transition back as we go through the next couple months. So I just wanted to make that point before we say goodbye.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you did touch on one last thing, and that's, working virtually. Here at Jones, we haven't experienced, really any lack of efficiency. And it's because we do have systems in place to make sure we are in constant contact with each other, throughout the day. We utilize Microsoft Teams. I'd encourage your organization to either use Teams or Skype or some sort of system where you can all, remain in constant communication with each other. Because even though we've had success as an organization working virtually up to this point, we know that the reason we've had success is because we have these systems in place, and we're working off, the chassis of having, strong relationships face-to-face prior to entering, this epidemic. If you guys are looking to hire and onboard during this time, how do you, onboard virtual employees where, you're having to completely revamp your training and onboarding schedule? If you have any questions, in regards to that, Janice Lane with our HR team is an expert in that field, and she can help kind of give you pointers in terms of the best practices to make sure that your new employees remain just as efficient as your employees who once again were able to work off the foundations of strong face-to-face interactions. But that's, you made a good point, Drew, that kind of jogged my memory about as to why that piece is important.
Yeah.
But David, I do appreciate you asking the question about hard